Hello, hello, hello. Oh. Mhm. Hello,
Hello.
this is my first Zoom meeting. I'm certainly not an expert at this.
All right. Yeah, well, none of us are. But so far you got it working good.
Okay,
We'll get started about 6 o'clock as soon as everybody gets here. So kind of awkward at the beginning. Everybody's just kind of looking at each other, but yeah.
whose laptop are we looking at? Obviously the professor.
What's that?
Whose laptop are we looking at?
Mine.
Okay, okay. You're the professor?
Yes.
What's your name? I know I've heard good things about you.
Tom Walker.
Okay. Hi, Tom. I'm Greg.
Hi. How you doing?
All right. What time is this?
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Can any of you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Good deal, brothers. All right, if I fall asleep, kick me.
Now, sleeping is permitted in this. Hopefully you're at home.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, man.
All right, it looks like it's post time here. We might as well get started. Welcome. My name's Tom Walker. I'm the instructor here at the Peterson School Zoom class. My background is I'm a first engineer. I retired from the industry back in 2013 from the Brayton Point power plant, a big coal burner down there, Fall River. I am a paper chief at a paper mill up here in East Walpole, so I stay active in the business. But enough about me. I've been teaching for about 28 years. So enough about me. Let's talk about you. Stephen,
Yes, sir.
what's your story?
So I'm currently stationed. I'm currently in the army, and I'm stationed in Colorado. So there's a time difference, which is like 2 hours. I'm supposed to be at work, but I took excuse and told them I have a class today, which is starting. I have to make the introduction. So I'm originally from Nigeria, and yeah, so I'm getting out from the army like next year, so I'm trying to set up myself. So when I get back to Massachusetts, I can get something like.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, Dominic,
Yep.
what's your story?
I do HVAC currently, and I'm just kind of looking for something else to do. I haven't really enjoyed the last couple of years doing what I do.
Okay. All right. So you're looking to get into possibly boiler operation, the boilers.
Yes.
All right. Well, good luck to you. Jeff Lopez.
How's it going? Currently work for National Grid, Dorchester, the LNG plant. So need to get second fireman license to keep on moving forward.
All right. Yeah, I've had a few dozen of you people over the years, so I understand what you're up against. So yeah, good luck to you.
Thank you. Heard a lot of good things about you from Brent and everybody else.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, we'll see if you get the license.
Hopefully.
Yep. All right. Well, good luck to you, Tommy Medeiros.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can hear
Hey, good. How are you? I'm an operations manager for Sodexo. currently have my special operator's license for one of our sites in Waltham. I was recommended to take this class by my other operation manager, Michael Wood. So he told me to, the more we can get ahead, the better it looks on both of us. So I'm here to take this class.
Sounds good. Sounds like a good plan. All right, good luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Kevin Shea, what's your story?
Hi, how you doing? My story basically is I'm working in insulation right now. I'm just an installer and I'm just looking for something much better, something that'll be more like a career.
Yeah. One of the things that steers a lot of people to this business is there's really no physical labor. And that's what attracted me when I was a young man. So I can appreciate anybody getting interested in this because of that. Nobody likes hard work. It's tough on the body. So good luck to you.
Thank you.
How about Donovan?
Currently a metals operator at Wind Waste Innovations in Millbury. And, just looking to move up. So starting with the Second Fireman.
All right, fair enough. Sounds like a plan. All right, David Boyd.
Yes, I recently took over as Director of Maintenance for Home Market Foods. I don't know if you know a guy named Bill Olson. He was he goes way back. His dad was one of the first. He's the one who trained me on my second fireman's license at Angelica Textiles. So now I'm at a director's position and I have a plant full of people and need to organize it. So with that said, I need to take the engineer's position for the plant and our second plant that we'll be building. So I kind of got my hands cut out with a lot of different things. So
Now you're at the plant in Norwood.
correct.
Yeah, my parents live in Norwood. They refer to that as the meatball factory because
It is.
one of the products you guys make is meatballs, and you can smell it in the town. And
Well, you can't any longer because we have an RTO there, which burns up all the fumes, but
Oh,
you're
nice.
right.
yeah,
So we make meatballs, hot dogs, and at 7-Eleven, the roller bites. Those are like, I'm telling you, guy, this is gas station food, but they can't make it fast enough.
you still got those funky Japanese boilers there.
Yes, we do. The ones with no sight glasses.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, years ago, not that long ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, I got a tour through there. Yeah, it
You're
was
always
quite
welcome to come back again.
quite an interesting place, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, good luck to you.
Thanks, brother.
All right, Joshua, I'm sorry. Joshua, you out there?
Hello.
Hello,
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
How you doing?
All right,
I'm working in Procter and Gamble, Gillette in Boston, assistant plant operator. I got my seconds, looking to get my thirds. I've been there a year.
so you're gonna skip first fireman or?
Yeah, I'm gonna see how I feel towards the end of the course. If I'm comfortable with the third, I'll go for the thirds. If not, I'll go for the first.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds like a good plan. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Jim Gibbons.
How you doing? I have my first fireman's license, and I work in a high-rise downtown Boston, and also a part-time job at a hospital in Cambridge.
And you going for your thirds?
Yep, going for my third.
All right. Sounds like a good plan. Good luck to you. Joseph Lane.
Yeah, I currently have my second, work at UMass in Boston. they're supposed to be building their own power plant, so I want to upgrade to it first so I can work with the turbines.
All right, so you're gonna go for first fireman or third?
Probably just the first for now.
All right, how much time you got on your second fireman's?
About a year.
Okay, all right, well, you might want to reconsider that. With a year and a half, you can sit for your third, so you might want to, I'll try to talk you into that before we get done here, but it's up to you. All right, how about Greg Lovett?
I'm a second fireman's. I worked at Twin Rivers Technology since 2007. I've been in the control room there for over a decade. They blocked me from going to the fire, the boiler house. So I'm pursuing my thirds, and that's about it.
All right,
I am planning on skipping my firsts.
okay, yeah, that seems to be pretty popular right now, so good luck to you there.
Thank you.
All right, let's see, Richard Piper, you here?
Yes, sir. Right now, I am a second fireman at Baker Commodities in Billerica, and I am just going to get my first and keep moving up the chain.
Keep moving up the ladder. All right, sounds like a good plan. All right, anybody I didn't call on? Anybody that I left out? All right, fair enough. All right, well, let's get to it. All right. What's going on here for the second fireman? People that really don't know what's going on. I'm actually preparing you to take a state exam for your second fireman's license, which is the entry-level license in this business. For the people going for their third engineers or first firemen, the first 12 weeks of this class will be like a refresher for you. And then we'll get into some specific stuff for first firemen and third engineers. All right. But basically what happens is the Department of Fire Services, they do all the boiler and pressure vessel inspections. They license all the firemen and engineers. They do boiler inspectors commissions. They do oil burner technicians. Now you're getting into a pretty tight little industry. There's less than 5,000 active firemen and engineers in the business. About 600 of those are the special licenses. All right, somebody here mentioned they had one, and that allows them to run the boiler at their facility only. All right, the rest of us are firemen or engineers. All right, Massachusetts has got a pretty strong license law. It's been in effect since 1895. Kind of the envy of a lot of other states. So people that like to move around, get a job in Florida or South Carolina, they love the Massachusetts license down there. So if that's your plan, that's certainly possible. All right. In your binder, I gave you a list of people that are the important players at the Department of Fire Services. This one woman, Maria Pereira, she's the license and exam coordinator. She usually is very helpful to anybody that has any questions about their test. And then there's a list of the 8 district engineering inspectors. Some of you are familiar with your district engineering inspector. And basically, this is a map showing you the districts that they cover. All right. For second firemen, if you're not in the industry, they're going to assign you an inspector closest to where you live. So your district engineering inspector will be closest to your home. For everybody else that's working in the industry, the district engineering inspector will be the one assigned to your facility where you work. All right, so that's the difference there. I put this schedule up Let me just make it a little bigger here for you. This shows you that the test, the state exam, is given the last Wednesday of every month this year. All right. So for you second firemen, it looks like you'll be able to take the test August 31st or September 28th. I guess that's really up to you. For the third engineers, maybe the September test or the October test will be in your best interest. All right. It also tells you the deadline that your application has to be on their desk by in order for you to take the test in any given month. All right. Does everybody kind of understand this? All right. You can't take the test when you want. You have to show up to an assigned test. All right. And we'll talk more about this as we move on. Now, one of the things I didn't get to do today, because this class kind of started in a hurry, is print out a schedule for you. All right. I got to actually make up a new schedule. But what I'm going to give you is a schedule of what we're going to talk about every class. And this will follow the binder that you've been assigned, the book you've been given. All right. So everything that I have, every slide that I have, you'll have a copy of. All right. Any questions about that? All right. There'll be a couple of quizzes, a midterm, and a final exam. All right. There'll be assigned homeworks. All right. All the homework questions, all the quiz questions, the midterm, the final exam, all the test questions come right off the state exam. All right. So by the end of the class, you would have seen all the questions they can ask you. All right. For the third engineers, again, the first 12 weeks is kind of a refresher to get you back in the game. You'll continue on for 3 weeks beyond the second fireman. All right. And what will happen, I'll mail you 5 PowerPoint presentations that will cover all the questions asked on the first fireman and third engineers exam. All right. Does everybody kind of get the drift of this? All right. So by tomorrow, you should have this schedule. I'll send it to you via email. All right. I just didn't get it made up by tonight. All right. Any questions? All right, good. All right. Now, probably the most important document in this industry is Chapter 146. Chapter 146 is where they pull the majority of the questions on the state exam. All right. The first section deals with definitions. The only definitions that you need to know are the definitions of a boiler and the definition of a pressure vessel. All right. I would recommend you memorize this definition. A boiler is a closed vessel in which water under pressure is transformed into steam by the application of heat. A pressure vessel, on the other hand, is a closed vessel in which the source of pressure is external to itself. An example might be a compressed air tank, a deaerator, for those of you that are in the industry, all right? Any pressure vessel not identified as a boiler is called a pressure vessel, all right? So those are the only 2 definitions they're really going to beat you up on, all right? So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You might have known this already, all right? The next page I didn't give you, but I thought it was interesting enough to tell you about it. The state boiler inspectors are now authorized to carry firearms. And as silly as that sounds, why would a boiler inspector need a gun?
In case we have to let the air out of the boiler real quick.
Yeah, it's well, I guess they can be called upon to act as civil servants in times of civil unrest. So if there's a riot, you people get all whipped up, they can show up with their guns and keep the peace, I guess. But it's interesting, back in the 70s, when I first got a license in this business, the boiler inspectors carried firearms in holsters, which was even silly back then. But so they're back to doing that now anyway. Section 2 deals with a group of people within Chapter 146 called the Board of Boiler Rules. You might have heard this term before. They don't beat up second firemen on this, so we're going to kind of glaze over it. But later on, when I get the thirds alone, we'll talk about this in more detail, the Board of Boiler Rules. These are the people that you would contact if you want an extension on your boiler inspection, or you're asking for the department to do you any favors. All right, so they're a good group to know. They publish their minutes a couple times a year, and basically it all revolves around granting boiler extensions for the annual boiler inspection. Those are the people you'd see about that. One of the things I ask everybody is in Section 6, all right? All boilers in Massachusetts, all right, have to be inspected internally and externally every year, all right? So that's a big question, and that comes up quite often on the state exam. All right. You can get up to a 6-month extension of that annual requirement. If your company's busy, you need the boiler. All right. You can't get it down in time for the annual inspection. And then the last thing they tell you in this section, the last sentence, is that the first inspection done on any boiler in the Commonwealth of Mass has to be done by the Department of Fire Services. All right. Many of you are probably familiar with insurance company inspectors who do the boiler inspections. All right. The first inspection has to be done by the state. Any questions? So to sum it up, the summaries here on this page, all boilers operating over 15 PSI. Now, for those of you that are new to the business, any boiler that operates at 15 pounds per square inch or less is classified as a low pressure boiler. You don't need a license to operate it. Anything above that, any pressure above 15 PSI is considered a high pressure boiler, and you need to be licensed to operate that. And that's why you're here. All right. All right. But anyway, boilers over 15 PSI shall be inspected internally and externally every year. The external inspection shall be done while the boiler is steaming. All right. The internal and the external inspection are two different inspections. The internal is done when the boiler is off, opened up, so the inspector can look at it closely, and the external is done with the boiler running. Generally speaking, the external inspection is done 6 months after the internal inspection. All right. And you can get a 6-month extension All right. Now, the question that comes out of this on the state exam is, what is the maximum interval between boiler inspections? All right. And obviously, it's 18 months,
Okay.
a year plus the 6 months. All right. Because some of you are going for third engineer, and that means you'll be the engineer in charge. All right. There's paperwork that you'll be required to fill out to get boilers or pressure vessels inspected. All right. That paperwork is shown here. It's on the DFS website. All right. And you fill this out, you submit it, and they'll come and inspect your boiler or pressure vessel. Section 7 tells us there's a whole bunch of boilers that don't have to be inspected. All right. Boilers in private residences, low pressure boilers. All right. None of those guys have to be inspected, although it's a pretty good idea. Ironically, they tell us in the first sentence that boilers on railroad locomotives, steam-powered fire engines don't have to be inspected. But of course, you'll wait a long time before you see one of those again. All right. But the one thing that upsets most people about this list is that any boilers under the jurisdiction of the federal government, all right, are exempt from Massachusetts law. So that means military bases within Massachusetts, federal court buildings, courthouses, federal facilities, their boilers don't have to be inspected. All right. Boilers used for agricultural or horticultural purposes don't have to be inspected. So there are a couple loopholes in that law. All right. They're not going to beat you up on this, but it's just a good thing to know. All right. Section 8 just reminds you that you have to have your boiler inspected. All right. Just like your automobile. All right. And when you get your boiler inspected, you'll get a certificate of inspection. All right. All right. That certificate of inspection has to hang in the boiler room or the engine room where it can be easily read by everybody. All right. All right. If you guys happen to use portable boilers, the certificate of inspection for a portable boiler has to be kept with it at all times. All right. So you can't say, oh, we left it back at the shop or back at the plant. All right. It has to be with it at all times. Section 9 is where they first introduce to you a term that's used pretty widely in this industry, MAWP, maximum allowable working pressure. Every boiler has a maximum allowable working pressure. Section 9 says, don't operate the boiler beyond that maximum allowable working pressure. Those of you that are familiar with boilers know that the boiler normally won't operate anywhere near that pressure. Does everybody kind of get it? It would have to be a deliberate attempt on your part to get the boiler to operate at pressures above its designed MAWP. But the big question on the state exam that comes up is, what's the maximum pressure that any boiler can operate at? All right. Now, some of you work in relatively small plants. One of the boilers we had at Brayton Point, the steam pressure was 3,650 PSI. All right. That's above the critical pressure of steam. All right. That boiler produced 4 million pounds of steam an hour. All right. But the point is this, every boiler, the maximum allowable working pressure is the highest pressure that it can operate at. All right. So that's what they're looking for.
How do you get that much water in that boiler?
That boiler was what they call a once-through boiler. It had a feed pump, and for every pound of feed water went in, a pound of steam came out. There was no steam and water drum in it. The water became steam, and how you controlled flow was with the feed pump. All right. And that feed pump had a discharge pressure of 4,400 PSI. Pretty high pressure stuff, you know. That unit made about 650 megawatts, about the same output as the Pilgrim nuclear power plant did. So. Section 11, and you probably notice here that I'm going to start skipping around because I'm only picking out the things that they might ask you about on the state exam. We're not going to interest ourselves in anything else. But Section 11 tells you what the boiler inspector is looking for when he does the external boiler inspection. All right. The inspector will come in. He'll observe the pressure of steam carried on the boiler, the general condition, ascertain if the safety valve and the appliances for indicating the pressure of steam and the level of water in the boiler are in proper working order. Many of you have probably seen this. They have, a lot of boiler inspectors have a test gauge. They'll isolate your pressure gauge, screw on their own, see if they get a corresponding reading. They might have you blow down the water column in the gauge glass, all right? Just to make sure that you know what you're doing and that it's reading an accurate level in the boiler. How many people have heard the term safety valve? All right, what does a safety valve do?
Set for a certain pressure. If the boiler achieves it, it kicks off.
Yeah, actually, the safety valve relieves excess pressure and discharges it to a safe location, usually the roof. All right. But a safety valve prevents excess pressure. All right. And what they're telling you with here is you shouldn't play with it, tamper with it, or load it up in any way. And that's, again, common sense. For those of you that haven't seen it, this is what a safety valve looks like. All right. In its generic form. All right. The boiler pressure is coming up here. If the safety valve, if the boiler pressure exceeds spring tension, the valve opens and it allows steam to be discharged to a safe location. They're all equipped with a manual test lever, so you can manually test it periodically to make sure that it's working. All right. Everybody seen one of those? We'll talk about those in great detail down the road. All right. Section 13 reminds you that there's 3 types of boiler inspectors. All right. Boiler inspectors that work for the state of Massachusetts, the Department of Fire Services. Boiler inspectors that work for insurance companies like FM Global. All right. And boiler inspectors that work for contractors or the manufacturers of boilers. They're called shop inspectors. All right. And they generally inspect boilers that have had a welded repair or welded construction during the manufacturing process. All right. So that's the question on the state exam. How many different types of boiler inspectors are there? So there's 3. Just like you would imagine, the boiler has to be inspected, and the rules say this: they have to give you at least 2 weeks' notice if they want to do an internal boiler inspection. So they have to give you 14 days' notice of their intention to do a boiler inspection. Now, that's only for the internal boiler inspection. All right, no notice is required for the external boiler inspection. The inspector can just show up anytime. All right. Again, some of you that are in the industry know this. The state of Massachusetts has its own numbering system. All right. That numbering system is called the MS numbering system. MS stands for Mass Standard. Back in the olden days, there used to be nice brass tags, all right, with a chain, and those were kind of collector's items, so people would steal them. Today, it's just a plastic tag, but the state of Massachusetts numbers every boiler and every pressure vessel, all right, so they can keep track of it. Probably the most important question in here is covered in section 27. And what it tells us is what information is on a certificate of inspection for the boiler. All right. And that information is on the next page, this page, where it tells us that the name of the owner or user, usually the company name, and the location is usually the street address, city or town. The size and the number of the boiler. What number are they looking for? This is a lot easier than you think.
Isn't it the maximum allowable working pressure?
No,
How about the number of the boiler, the MS number, whatever?
no, that's not a bad guess. All
What
right.
we call it.
Yeah, there you go. What you call it. All right. And think about it. If we have 3 boilers, how do we refer to them?
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3. Unless you live in Rhode Island, then they do it different there. All right. But this is how we do it in Mass, right? Boiler 1, boiler 2, and boiler number 3. Everybody gets that? Why do we have more than one boiler?
Just in case there's a problem with it, you can continue operation.
Okay, redundancy. All right. What can't we do with steam? We can't store it. We have to make it on demand. So if boiler number 1 shits the bed, we got to rely on our backup boilers, right? Let's say you're running a hospital. You don't want to run on one boiler, do you? That one boiler dies. What do you got to do? Send everybody home? All right. All right. So you get the idea. Redundancy. All right. But that's the point. In Massachusetts, we generally number them starting with the number 1. Some of you only have one boiler at your plant. Then that would be called the boiler. All right. All right. You don't need to give it a number, right? All right. The date of the inspection has to be on there. Why is that important?
Because we need to know our yearly inspection.
Excellent. You need to know if the boilers, now, if you're a boiler operator and you notice the boiler hasn't been inspected for a couple of years, should you be concerned?
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. That certificate of inspection will always be signed by the inspector. All right. It will tell us the maximum allowable working pressure. And it will be located in the boiler room or the engine room where it can be easily read by anyone. All right. It has to be out in the open. It can't be in the chief's office or some other location. All right. This one, they're going to ask questions about, so pay attention to this one. This is the information. And those of you that are in a boiler room, you've seen these a million times, right? These certificates of inspection. All right. So maybe be a good time to take another look at it if you get a chance. Section 31 talks about a hydrostatic pressure test. Has anybody heard of this?
Yes.
Can anybody tell me what do we do during a hydrostatic pressure test?
I think you fill up the, I'm not 100% sure, but I thought you filled the boiler to capacity. And I mean, I think you control the pressure by the feed water pump. I'm not
That's
100%.
exactly right. That's good. Yep. And why are we doing that?
To check for any leaks or any
Excellent.
small leaks.
To check for any leaks. All right. Why wouldn't we use steam?
Danger.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, think about it. If we pressurize the boiler normally and we got a leak, all right, we got to vent it, drain the steam off, drain it, and the boiler will be hot, right? With water, it'll be ambient temperature. We can work on it right away. So a hydro is what we call it when we pressure test the boiler with water, all right? A full-blown hydrostatic test is 1.5 times the MAWP. What most of us do in this industry is what we call a squeeze. We just bring the boiler up to its operating pressure, all right, just for the purpose of testing leaks. Section 32 says you cannot prevent a boiler inspector from coming onto any premises on which a boiler is located. All right. I know Jeff Lopez not familiar with this story, but National Grid, I think everybody knows this plant. If you go up the expressway, you know, the big gas tank that the nun painted. National Grid has their plant right at the base of that. They vaporize gas. And they, about 10 years ago, they chose not to let the boiler inspector come into the plant. The security guard told the guy, no, you can't come in. And when he did get in, he wreaked havoc on those people, those poor people at National Grid. And for many years, nobody there got a license, kind of as a payback. So it's a good story to remember. Always let the boiler, if somebody says they're a boiler inspector, let them in. All right, because the boiler room is a great place to keep other pieces of equipment. One of the pieces of equipment they often keep there is compressed air tanks. All right. And because of that, it's often the boiler operator that's responsible for the compressed air tank, starting and stopping the compressor. But anyway, what they're telling you in this section is pretty straightforward. Compressed air tanks over 50 PSI have to be inspected every 2 years. And because they have to be inspected every 2 years, what document will they have?
Certificate of
A certificate of inspection. There you go. Good, good. All right. There's only one other question they ask about compressed air tanks on the state exam. All right, how would you prepare a compressed air tank for an inspection? Obviously, you're gonna isolate it, valve it off, bleed off the pressure. All right, you're gonna open up the manholes or handholes, clean it out, and leave it in that condition for when the inspector comes in to do his inspection. The other piece of equipment that's often stuck in the boiler room are chillers, what you and I call refrigeration equipment. All right. Refrigeration equipment has to be inspected if it's over 20 tons in capacity. All right. They have to be inspected every year. Right. So chillers, refrigeration equipment over 20 tons has to be inspected every year. The question that usually comes along with this is, what exactly is a ton of refrigeration? All right. If you're an HVAC guy, you probably already know that a ton of refrigeration is 12,000 BTUs per hour. Where that number comes from is back in the old days, air conditioning, they used to take blocks of ice, melt it, pass that cool water through a coil, and blow air across it for air conditioning. All right. So a ton of ice is 2,000 pounds. All right. To melt a pound of ice and get a pound of cold water needs 144 BTUs, the latent heat of fusion. All right. That's 288,000 BTUs per day. Divided by 24 hours is 12,000 BTUs per hour. If you ever had one of those small window air conditioners, all right, they typically run about 8,000 to 12,000 BTUs per hour. You're looking at a ton of refrigeration. You get the idea, all right? And that's it for all the other fun stuff. Section 46 starts with the necessity of you to have a license if you're going to operate high pressure boilers. All right. The state of Massachusetts has determined that there are 3 categories of boiler operation. Continuous attendance, which requires the boiler operator to stay in the boiler room all the time. Non-continuous attendance and periodic attendance. All right. Now, I'm not letting out on any secrets here, but if you're getting into this business, which of these do you think is the plant that you'd probably prefer to work in?
Continuous attendance.
Continuous attendance. That way there, you're the boiler guy and nobody can bother you with anything else. All right. For instance, at Home Market Foods, they make those poor bastards run around, act like a mechanic. All right. Drive the fork truck, do all kinds of hard work and check on the boiler periodically. Is that true?
That's a true statement. I
that's
make him
true.
do all that.
Yep. And no, the company still wonders why every year they send about 20 people to Peterson's to get a fireman's license. Yeah.
That's actually a whole nother case.
So if you're getting into this business, you don't want to work. All right. You want to be the boiler guy. All right. The downside to that is if your relief doesn't show up for work, you have to
don't leave.
stay. You're stuck. All right. So that's probably the big downside to this industry. All right. Whereas if you work in a non-continuous or periodic type plant, you can leave. All right. So it's a big difference. All right. Now, what's the difference between those types of plant? It's all based on boiler horsepower. All right. Continuous attendance is boilers over 501 horsepower. All right. Now, one of the things they require that I teach you here is what they mean by aggregate horsepower. All right. Let's say in this example right here, I have 3 boilers. But all 3 boilers are connected to a common steam line. So any combination of boilers can supply steam to the process. Each of these boilers is 200 boiler horsepower. What kind of plant is this?
Continuous.
This is a continuous attendance plant. Even though on any given day, one of these boilers might not be running, all right, it still remains connected by steam piping to the header. And it has to be included in the aggregate horsepower. Does everybody kind of get this? All right. So in this particular plant, you'd be required to stay in the boiler room anytime the boilers are running. All right. Now, there's a ton of plants out there that have non-continuous, and that's what you are, right, Dave?
Non-continuous, yes.
Yep. Non-continuous attendance, all right. Or periodic attendance. And that means that the boiler operator can go out, be a mechanic, be a line machinery operator. He can do other tasks in the facility, all right? And if, for some people, that interests you, all right? That might not be a bad gig, all right? But it's hard work, all right? And what I suspect is the reason you get into the boiler business was to avoid work, all right? So continuous attendance is what you should be looking for. Any questions? All right. Now, at Dave's plant, non-continuous attendance, they have to have remote monitoring stations, all right? All right. And you guys had some funky stuff there. For a while, you had monitors out in the facility, right?
Correct. We have on the Japanese version boilers, they have cameras that we literally point at the controls of each of the 3 boilers there. And then that's broadcast so we can see anything that goes on in it. Plus it tricks off a warning system as well if there's an issue.
Okay. Okay. All right. And the bottom line is this: in any of these periodic or non-continuous type plants, the boiler guy should get out in the boiler room 4 to 6 times a shift. All right. Generally, it's accepted as every couple hours to make sure that everything is okay with the boiler. He understands that he needs to go there anytime there's an alarm indicating there's a problem with the boiler. All right. Does everybody kind of get this? All right. So let's face it, the reality is most boilers today are completely automatic. they really don't need us babysitting them. But it's a nice gig if you can find a job in a continuous attendance plant. All right. Does anybody out there work in a continuous attendance plant?
I did.
Yeah, how was that?
It was like you said, you're always relying on your relief, and you're working holidays, you're working weekends, but it's not a bad gig, and there's good money in it.
You didn't work all that hard, did you?
No, I didn't.
All right. So what are you saying? Now you're in a non-continuous?
I took a break
Yep.
to pursue continuous operation of a boiler,
Yep.
and
All right.
maybe back in the same plant.
All right.
So if I may,
Yep.
for the non-continuous and the working, I would say that there are a lot of plants, Angelica Textiles, for one of them, they have a couple plants here in Massachusetts that have boilers and stuff. It's not a bad gig being a mechanic or moving up into supervisory or where I'm at, a director of maintenance, to have the license that allows you to do a variety of things and open up opportunities for a variety of industrial maintenance positions.
That's a good point. Good point. Angelica, that's the laundry, right? The industrial laundry. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a few of their people come through here over the years.
Yep.
So yeah, it's really up to the individual on what you want to do. But yeah, there's plenty of work out there right now. So
So
Now-
let me plug. I'm looking for mechanics.
okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, a guy that's in the same kind of type of thing you are is Concord Foods. They're over in Brockton. They make a lot of the stuff that Dunkin' Donuts uses for their flavored coffees and stuff. And they're non-continuous. And most of those guys, some of them mechanics, others are actual machine operators on the floor. And but they have the boiler license just in case. And so yeah, there's a ton of work out there. There's plenty of opportunities out there. So you're right in that respect.
I gotta say, in Home Market Foods is probably one of the better paying organizations when it comes to its maintenance department. I've seen a bunch, and I gotta tell you right now, we pay above average. It's clearly above average. It's not even a close call. And so it's a good place to start and build a career.
Yeah, good. All right. So anyway, how they base this on this continuous, non-continuous, and periodic attendance.
Chris Walton.
Hey, can I just take this call for 1 second? Just bear with me. Hello. Hi. Yeah. specifically say anything about her, but they are received. No problem. Yeah, and I also have all those cash that you sent to us. You go. Yeah. I'll work on it. All right, thanks. All right, sorry about that. Apologize. I've been waiting to hear from that guy for a while. All right. Anyway, so how they break these categories down is by what they call boiler horsepower, aggregate boiler horsepower. So I don't know, at Dave's plant, what do you have? 3 boilers, Dave, or 2?
We have 3 and then 2.
Yep.
We
And
have
what are
them
they,
broken
like
down into different headers so that we stay within the limits.
within the law? Yep, very good. All right. So, but anyway, that's how the law is broken down. Now, one of the things that required of a boiler operator is that every time you go to the boiler room, all right, you have to sign an operator's logbook. And you could see you have to sign it with your license number. All right. Now, for a non-continuous attendance plant, in practice, you have to sign this logbook every time you go to the boiler room. So this could be multiple times a shift. Does everybody get that? All right. Whereas in a continuous attendance plant, they only sign the logbook once per shift because it's the same person that doesn't leave the boiler room. All right. All right. While you're in the boiler room, these are the tasks that you'll be required to do. All right. And it's stuff like operate the surface blowdown, operate the bottom blowdown, blow down the water column in the gauge glass, test the low water cutoff, manually lift the safety valves. All right. You get the idea. All right. Now, what I usually discuss at this point, does everybody know what boiler blowdown is? Has anybody heard that term? All right.
Yes, it's when you get like sediment in the water. With all the water, it carries impurities.
Yep.
And you can blow the boiler down to get rid of that and protect the metal in the boiler.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, typically what happens is all water has impurities in it. Okay. But the fact that we boil the water and make steam, that steam now is basically pure. It's without impurities. The problem is the impurities remain behind in the remaining water, and those impurities become concentrated. All right. So what happens on every boiler, there's a bottom blow-off pipe with a couple of manual valves. And periodically, we let water out of the boiler by opening these valves. All right. And we reduce the amount of solids of water and of impurities in the water. When we do that, when we drain the boiler, it sends in new water and the whole process starts all over again. All right. Today, most boilers are equipped with a continuous blowdown, sometimes called a surface blowdown. All right. This is a piece of pipe that's perforated right near the surface of the normal operating water level with a control valve on it. and we open that valve and it continuously pulls water and impurities out of the boiler. All right. The idea behind this is this will minimize the amount of time we have to operate these bottom blowdowns. All right. Does everybody kind of get that? All right. Now, as far as the gauge glass and the water column, you and I can't see the water level in the boiler. So what we rely on is a gauge glass attached to the side of the boiler. All right. What they ask us to do is periodically blow it down and blow down the water column to make sure they're not plugged with sludge or sediment. All right. And we're getting an accurate reading of the drum level in the gauge glass. Everybody follow that? All right. And then when I mentioned the safety valves, I said they're equipped with a test lever. All right. So we can manually test the safety valve to make sure that it's going to lift when we need to do that. All right. What they recommend is they recommend you manually lift the safety valves every 30 days. All right. That's to prevent them from rusting shut. All right. So they will work when you need them to work. All right. Anyway, what's the point of all this, you're saying? Well, every operator has to fill this logbook out. On the state exam, they're going to ask you what information is not on this logbook. For instance, if they said to you, did you see if there are any contractors on the premises? All right. That's not on this logbook. All right. Did you check the smokestack for smoke? That's not on this logbook. Does everybody get that? So the only way I can prepare you to answer what's not on this logbook is for you to know what's on this logbook. All right. All right. So the previous section just tells you everything that's on that logbook, with this being an actual picture of what the logbook looks like. All right. Now, for you guys that are out there that operate boilers, have you seen this? I guess that's a yes. Yeah.
Everybody signs it.
Yep. Now, section 47 is kind of weird. It takes a little explanation, I guess, but it says if they catch you operating high pressure boilers without a license, they have to come back a week later and catch you again. Catching you once isn't enough. They have to come back and find out that you're still doing it a week later. Now, I'm not going to insult anybody, but if you get caught once and you're still doing it next week, right? You're not the sharpest guy, right? Does everybody kind of get that? All right. All right. The point is this. Out of this section, they've come up with a rule that says the longest period you can operate without a license is 7 days. All right. So a lot of companies use that as a guideline. All right. When somebody quits, all right, how soon they have to get somebody. And you know, today, hiring somebody in 7 days, not going to happen. So what happens is the guys that are still there end up splitting the shift, working overtime. All right. Somebody mentioned earlier that there's a ton of overtime in this business. All right. And then while I think of that as pretty much a young person's game, from my standpoint, you can make a lot of money in this industry. And it's better that you make it when you're young, I think.
You know, put case in point, you go over 10 hours of overtime a week, you really start to see the taxes get taken big time.
Yeah.
It's almost not worth it.
Well, to give you an idea, there's a big power plant where the hospitals are called Maytep, where Children's Hospital is, and those guys, and this plant supplies all the steam, the chilled water, the electricity to a lot of these plants. And some of the operators there have 3,000 or 4,000 hours overtime a year. All right. They have mechanics that have earned $250,000. All right. Which is crazy, you know, you figure the average year for me and you is 2,000 hours a year, and to work 3,000 or 4,000 hours of overtime, yeah.
You get burnt out.
Oh yeah, you know. But a lot of the trash plants, and when you get a second fireman's license, they'll come looking for you. All right, they burn out people pretty good. That's their thing. They work you, 80, 90, 100 hours a week. For most people, it's too much. The money's nice, like you say, but enough is enough. All right. So the next section deals with how does the state of Massachusetts determine boiler horsepower? All right. Now, in a display of real understanding, the state of Massachusetts says this: if the boiler manufacturer tells you the boiler horsepower, by all means, use that number. For instance, for those of you familiar with Cleaver Brooks boilers, all right, those are those packaged fire tube boilers. Their model number is always the boiler horsepower. All right, so that's a sweet way of determining boiler horsepower. All right, if that's not available, and most of them don't do it that way, then you got to calculate it. All right, if you know the steam output in pounds per hour, if you divide that number by 34.5, you'll get boiler horsepower. Some boilers only tell you the fuel input, all right, in BTUs per hour. That number is 41,840. And finally, if the steam output is measured in BTUs per hour output, then you divide that number by 33,475. Now, the bad news is this: you got to memorize these 4 methods. All right. The question that's going to kill most people, though, is where do these numbers come from?
Can you back up just one quick second? The last
Yes.
one you said was BTU hour output. That was what, steam you said?
BTU per hour output, the steam output, but
Okay.
expressed as BTUs per hour,
Yep.
divided by 33,475.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, because you have steam output on this saying divided by 34.5. Okay, and then 33.475. Okay.
Right. Some boiler manufacturers list the output in pounds of steam per hour. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I know this sounds like a trick question, and I might as well get it out of the way now. I think everybody here realizes that if the boiler is making 10,000 pounds of steam per hour, how much water does it need to do that?
10,000 pounds.
10,000 pounds. That's
Right,
a lot of
but that
people.
wouldn't be, would that be, that's not gallons though.
No, pounds. All right. So if the boiler's making 10,000 pounds an hour of steam, it needs to have 10,000 pounds an hour of water going into the boiler. All right. Every pound of steam is a pound of water. All right. That's the only point I'm trying to make. All right. And everybody should get that, I hope. All right. A pound of steam is a pound of water and vice versa. All right. Now, as far as these numbers and where they come from, let's start with your favorite boiler, just horsepower. Does anybody know where we got the expression horsepower?
Yeah,
Anybody?
how much a horse could pull it at some point. That
Excellent.
was what it
Excellent.
originally was.
Yep, as hokey as it sounds. Back in the early 1800s, they took a horsey, all right? And he was sad, all right? They put a harness on him to a pulley with a weight. And they said, giddy up. And the horse lifted 550 pounds, 1 foot in 1 second. And believe it or not, our forefathers said, that's close enough for us. All right. To this day, 550 foot-pounds a second, 33,000 foot-pounds a minute is 1 horsepower. All right. I don't need to tell you, this is pretty hokey. All right. In fact, most countries, Germany, Japan, they don't recognize this at all. They think this is crazy. All right. But anyway, 50 years go by and now it's 1876 and the newfangled machines are boilers. All right. So a new problem comes up. How are we going to put a number to how much power a boiler makes? And what they decided was this: the average boiler in 1876 operated at 70 PSI. And it produced 30 pounds of steam per hour. So they said, why don't we call 30 pounds of steam an hour 1 boiler horsepower? And somebody else in the group said, yeah, but if you change the pressure, it'll change the amount of steam we make. So what they agreed upon was this. They said, let's assume that all boilers operate at atmospheric pressure. And the equivalent evaporation is 34.5 pounds an hour. And that became the standard for a boiler horsepower, 34.5 pounds per hour from and at 212, right? Now, those of you that took science in school probably remember this. If I have a pound of water at 212 and I want to make it a pound of steam, how much heat do I have to add? Well, that number is 970.3, the latent heat of evaporation. And if I multiply that by 34.5, that equals 33,475. That's the number of BTUs in a boiler horsepower. That's a question on the state exam. How many BTUs are in one boiler horsepower. 33,475. Now the question becomes this, and this should be pretty easy for you to figure out. If I have 33,475 BTUs going out of my boiler, how many BTUs do I need going in? Is the number going to have to be larger or smaller?
I'd say larger.
It has to be larger because the boiler is not 100% efficient, right? So what they did for the purpose of that calculation, they said, let's assume that all boilers are 80% efficient. And they divided 33,475 by 80%. And they come up with 41,840. That's how many BTUs you have to have input to make one boiler horsepower. So now everybody knows where all of these numbers come from. All right, why don't we do this? We've been at this about an hour and a half. Why don't we go ahead and take a break for about 10 minutes? And I'll see you in 10 minutes. Is that right?
Thank you. Oh.
going on?
Hey, Tom, do you
Yes.
remember an inspector by the last name Bucheri?
Yes.
Is he still there?
No, he retired.
No way.
Yeah, he was a watch engineer up at Salem Harbor way back in the day.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a good guy. He was fair, pretty decent.
He gave me my test when I went for my second fireman's license.
Yeah. He'd been around for years. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's old school. He hung it up. Happens to the best of us, you know. All right, might as well get back to it here. So I wouldn't worry about this boiler horsepower right now. I'm going to beat you up on this over and over again. All right. It is something that comes up on the state exam. So by the end of the class, you'll know about it. You'll know it. All right. Now, for years, we ran steam engines. All right. Today, nobody runs steam engines. In fact, the last steam engine plant was a place called Natick Paperboard. They ran all steam engines. They closed down about 12 years ago. Today, what we run is turbines. Now, turbines are a big deal in this industry because it's the reason there are different levels of licenses, all right? Steam turbines, think of them as a replacement for an electric motor. They can run a fan, a feed pump, a chiller, all right? The problem is usually you need licensed engineers to run steam turbines. A second-class fireman cannot run a steam turbine, all right? A first fireman, that's the first license where you can operate a steam turbine. A third engineer can actually be in charge of this size steam turbine. As most of you probably know, we still generate the majority of our electricity in this country by steam turbines that drive generators, all right? In this state, all the control room operators' jobs are held by second engineers, all right? Because they're operating a first-class plant, all right, under the engineer in charge, all right? So the whole thing with the license law, all right, and the reason people go for higher licenses is the ability to be in charge of and operate steam turbines, all right? All right. A second engineer can be in charge of any boiler plant out there, all right? As provided they don't have any steam turbines. A third engineer can be in charge of any steam plant where the boilers don't exceed 500 horsepower, all right? That's the majority of the steam plants out there, all right? So with a third engineer's license, you can be the engineer in charge, all right? That being said, and I know many of you have no interest in ever running a steam turbine plant, but the reason for the license law is to give us that ability, all right? So for third engineers, they often ask, how does the state of Massachusetts determine turbine horsepower? It's based on the external diameter of the steam supply pipe, all right? How much steam we can feed to that steam turbine, all right? You and I will go over this down the road. They're not gonna ask second firemen about this. So I'm not gonna waste any of their time talking about turbine horsepower tonight. All right. Now, section 49 tells you exactly what you can do with the license. If you're a second-class fireman, right here where the cursor is, about the middle of the page, it says second class to operate any boiler or boilers under the engineer or fireman in direct charge thereof. That's what you can do with the license. They're going to ask you that on the state exam. What can you do with a fireman's license? All right. You guys can operate any boiler or boilers. Doesn't matter how many, how big they are, you can operate them. All right. For those of you going for third engineer, that starts up here, third class. This one is the most wordy out of them all right? But third engineer, you can have charge of and operate a boiler or boilers not exceeding in the aggregate 150 horsepower when solid fuel is burned, or not exceeding in the aggregate 500 horsepower when steam is generated by the use of liquid or gaseous fuel, electric or atomic energy, or any other source of heat in an engine or engines not exceeding 50 horsepower each, or to operate a second-class plant under the engineer in direct charge thereof. So those of you going for third engineer, that's a mouthful. It's a lot to remember. All right. But this is the section that tells you what you can do with every license. All right. For me, the motivation to get the first engineer's license, it's also the shortest. First class to have charge of and operate any steam plant. Period. All right. Somebody here in this class mentioned they had the special license. Right now, this is the fastest growing segment of this business. Those people can get a license to run the boilers at a particular facility only if they apply for a special license. So the special license allows them to run the boilers at a particular plant only. Right? But a lot of people are going for this. There's a lot of plants out there that require the special license. All right. The other bad news about this business is whenever you renew your license, you have to have 30 hours of continuing education. All right. Once you're in the loop and your license expires, it renews for 5 years. So once every 5 years, you got to do the 30 hours. All right. Pretty painless. All right. And then you can renew your license for 5 years. All right. When this becomes a problem is the first time you renew your license. The first license you get will always expire on your birthday, and it will only be good for a year, but not more than 2 years. So almost immediately, within a year or so, you're going to have to take the 30-hour continuing education course to do that first renewal. All right. If you don't do it, they'll stamp your license inactive. If they stamp your license inactive, that just means you can't use, it's no good. How you make it active? You take the 30-hour course, submit the paperwork, and away you go, fat, dumb, and happy. All right. Any questions? All right. To be eligible to take the second fireman's test, the only requirement is you be 18 years old and pretty much be able to breathe on your own. All right. They'll waive the requirement that you be 18 if you went to vocational school and studied steam engineering. So some of the kids that come out of New Bedford Voc, they come out of high school with a first fireman's license, which is gives them a pretty good jump on things. All right. But you'll notice in this section, you can go and sit for the first fireman's license after 6 months of holding a second fireman's license. So you can start to move up the ladder pretty quick. All right. You can go sit for your thirds after you've held your first fireman's for a year, or you've held your second fireman's license for a year and a half. All right. So after a year and a half, you can become a third engineer. And then you can move up to second and first engineer. It's all up to you. Now, the other weird thing about this business is this. For a second fireman, we'll let anybody take the test. All right. But after that, for every other license, somebody in the business has to endorse your application. They have to sign for you. They have to endorse you by saying, you're a good person. You haven't blown anything up. You haven't killed anybody. All right. All right. Doesn't apply to second firemen. We let everybody in the business. All right, initially. All right. For the guys that work in this business, you have to hang a copy of your license up where you work. All right. There's usually a unique place called the license board where everybody hangs their license. All right. The engineer in charge is required to keep a logbook. His logbook is not much different than the operator's logbook. All it says is he reviewed the operator's logbook. All right. So he's required to do that on a daily basis. All right. When you get your oral exam, now remember, this test is 2 parts. You first pass the written test with a grade of 70% or better. And then if you pass that, you have to take an oral exam, all right, with the inspector, all right? For second fireman, it's usually no big thing, pretty simple. But at that time, they'll ask you to take an oath that basically says you are who you say you are, and that all the information you put on the application is true. So it's not a big deal. All right. Section 57 tells you you can take the test every 60 days. All right. So if you fail the written, you have to wait 60 days before you can reapply. All right. That used to be 90 days. They've changed it to 60 days. That's a good thing for you and me. All right. Section 58, I never understood. Basically, it says for any test you take, you can bring a friend who can take notes at the exam. So I've never had the balls to do that. So I need one of you to volunteer to bring a friend with you when you take the test. All right. I don't know what the point of this is. I think it might have something to do with maybe English is not your primary language. All right. But other than that, I don't know what it's for. All right. The other bad news about this business is just like a driver's license, they can suspend or revoke your license. All right. My experience has been this. I've been in the business 45 years. They'll suspend your license for minor infractions, just like your driver's license. You do stupid shit, they'll take your license away for 30 days, 60 days. If they revoke your license, you're not getting it back. It's gone for good. There's only been a few cases of people having their license revoked, and those people have generally blown up the whole plant. All right. The last time this happened was up at Salem Harbor, the power plant back in 2007. The boiler exploded. 3 people were killed in that incident. The chief engineer had his license revoked temporarily. He ended up getting it back, but it was a big deal. All right. So the thing is, don't do any crazy stuff and you'll be fine. All right.
Do they know what caused it to explode?
Yeah, I've got a whole blurb on it in Monday's class, and we'll go over it. But basically, it was a tube leak in what they call a dead airspace, and it pressurized the boiler casing, and eventually the whole side wall of the boiler failed, and there happened to be 3 mechanics working right in that general area on a primary air fan, and they were burnt up pretty good with steam. to put a number on that, the last time somebody was killed in Massachusetts in a boiler explosion was 1910. So it doesn't happen real often, as you can see, but it's a big deal when it does. But we'll talk about it next week on Monday. Now, Section 64 explains to you the whole license process. All right. What they're telling you is that the test you take, the written test, is going to be uniform. It's going to be fair. All right. And you've got to get at least a 70% on it to pass. All right. For second fireman, it's 50 multiple choice questions. Pretty straightforward. For first fireman, it's 60 multiple choice questions. For third engineer, it's 20 essay type questions. All right. So it's a little tougher. All right. They give you 4 hours to take the written test. All right. Which is a long time. All right.
I write really slow.
Yeah. Most second firemen, they're in and out of there in 20 minutes. It's not a big deal. All right. Yeah. When you go for the engineer's license and it's essay type questions, it takes longer, obviously. All right. Once you pass the written, the inspector will contact you and you have to take the oral part of the exam. Now, Dave, you did that, right? It wasn't that hard, right?
Not for the second fireman, no.
Pretty straightforward.
It was.
Anybody out there have trouble with their second fireman's test?
I did.
Did you really?
I failed the oral and
Really?
yes, I did. I went in there, I worked in like fatty acid and we have very like a different type of deaerator and stuff. And then when I was talking to him, he thought he knew I didn't understand and he failed me.
Really?
Yes, he did.
So did you get right back in there and take it? What happened?
I did. I worked with a lot of second firemen and third engineers and they kind of coached me through.
Okay, good. Yeah. That's unusual. I don't hear about it that often, but it does happen, you know. And it could be anything. It could be the inspector having a bad day. You pissed him off somehow. You know, you don't know what happens to people, but that's too bad. But you got it anyway, so that's all that matters. Anyway, at the oral exam, if you pass, they hand you a license right on the spot. All right. And you're free to go get a job. All right. There's no waiting period. There's no grace period. You're good to go. All right. And that's the thing I like about this. Excuse me. You can go get a job right away. All right. Now, for second engineer and first engineer, the oral exam consists of 3 inspectors. All right. So it's a little bit more challenging than 1 inspector, but you don't have to worry about that quite yet. All right. That's down the road, hopefully. Any questions about this process at all?
The nomination,
Endorsement?
endorsement, yes.
Yep.
Where do you go? Who do you have to know a third or a second or a first to get an endorsement?
You do, but you already know one now, me. All right.
Okay.
I'll endorse your application because you took the class here. Other people, you know, for most people, it's usually the chief. But since you're going to be the chief, you don't probably have somebody above you right now, or do you?
We have somebody who's the chief for the plant.
Yep, a paper chief, basically. Yep,
You got it.
yep. And
And I want somebody on site more of the time, hence why I'm going for mine.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I'm the, are you in Norwood or you're in the Norwood plant?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'm the paper chief over at Hollingsworth and Vos in East Walpole. It's only a
Okay.
couple miles from where you are. It's on Route 1A. But
Yep.
I go in there every day, sign the logbook. It's a pretty good deal. They seem happy with the arrangement. I've been doing it for about 12 years, so.
Yeah, good for you. I
Yeah.
say the same thing, but we're gonna be building another plant as well.
Yep. And the key to it that makes it work is that if you have good operators there all the time, that's important,
It is.
yeah.
And so we run 3 shifts, 6, 7 days a week. So I have to have operators on each shift. And so obviously I have my second, which I'll renew this October and hopefully test and pass for
Yep.
this as well. But I need to be able to fill in at any point in time and cover everything.
Yep, that's good. Now, one of the options available to you, and Greg probably got told this and he probably didn't do anything about it. Everybody has the right to appeal. If you're unhappy, if you fail for whatever reason, all right, you can appeal that decision. All right. My recommendation is never appeal, because here's what happens. The inspector that you're pissed off at goes and gets 2 of his inspector buddies and they form a board. And now you have to go in front of them and they will ask you every boiler question known to man. If you pass that, you win. You get the license. How many people do you think have passed that over the years? Yeah, nobody. All right. It's almost impossible. All right. But what they'll ask you on the state exam is who has the right to appeal? And the correct answer is anybody aggrieved by the decision of a single examiner has the right to appeal. All right. So if you had one inspector on your oral exam, he gave you a hard time, you don't think he treated you fair, you have the right to appeal. All right. Remember, the written test that you take, it's going to be corrected by a machine. It's filling the dots. But the guy that notifies you will be the district engineering inspector. And you could appeal his decision as well. So does everybody follow that? One inspector, you have the right to appeal. All right. The original license you get will be good for 1 year, but not more than 2. It will always expire on your birthday. All right. That's not a big deal. All right. If your license expires, it's not a big deal. You just renew it whenever you can, as soon as you can. However, if you go 1 year beyond the expiration date, your license becomes void. All right, so don't let that happen. Just like a driver's license. All right. Section 87 bothers most people. Once you become a licensed fireman, you're permitted to do pipe fitting work in the facility where you work. All right. You can't go out and hire yourself as a pipe fitter, but where you work, you can do pipe fitting work. Usually applies to the boiler room, working around the boilers. You can do any pipe fitting that's needed. All right. That's just the way it is. A lot of companies take advantage of this. They have the mechanics that have second fireman's licenses do all the pipe fitting in the facility. That's legal. All right. They don't have to go out and hire a contractor that has licensed pipe fitters. So it's a loophole in the law that most people work with. All right. It's not a big deal. Now, for you to sit for the license, it says a couple of things. It says you have to have a knowledge of chapter 146. What we talked about tonight covers that, all right? They're also going to have questions about the ASME code, all right? For second fireman, it's pretty easy. What does ASME stand for?
American Society of Mechanical Engineers.
Excellent. American Society of Mechanical Engineers, all right? There's another set of rules within the state of Massachusetts called 522 CMRs. That's the Board of Boiler Rules. We'll talk about those in a minute. All right. Any law in Massachusetts that applies to pollution falls under 310 CMRs. All right. The ASME code has a piping code. All right, B311. We'll talk about that. And OSHA, I think everybody here has heard of OSHA. All right. What they're going to ask you about is how do you get into a confined space like a boiler? And what does it mean to lock out, tag out equipment? Most of you have learned lockout, tag out procedures where you work. Is that true or no?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, this is something that everybody kind of gets on the job training for. All right. We'll talk about those though. And then there's the National Board. The National Board is the organization that commissions boiler inspectors, and they're responsible for inspecting welded repairs on boilers, which is a big deal, as you can imagine. All right. Now, in 522 CMR 202, there's only one thing that pertains to second fireman, paragraph 1. All right. If you say that you're a boiler operator, all right, what that means is that you're responsible for the equipment on the shift that you're working. All right. In other words, when you go home, you don't have any further responsibility. All right. The only requirement for you is that you fill out the operator's logbook while you're there, and that's it. The other 3 paragraphs apply to the engineer in charge and what that means. All right. The engineer in charge has to report any injuries within 24 hours. He has to notify the department if he accepts or quits a job as the engineer in charge within 7 days. All right. And as the engineer in charge, he realizes he's the person that's held responsible if anything goes wrong. He's like the coach of the Bruins. He didn't actually do anything wrong, but he's the guy they're going to come looking for when the team doesn't make the playoffs. All right. All right. Now, yeah, it's kind of screwed up, but that's basically the way that works. All right. And we'll talk about these in more detail. I'm just giving you the kind of the overview. All right. Now, a couple things I want you to write down. In Massachusetts, all boilers are required to have 2 low water cutouts. The difference between the 2 is that the second low water cutout requires a manual reset. Somebody has to be in the boiler room to manually reset that second low water cutout. The other thing I want you to write down is that dual pressure controls are not permitted in Massachusetts. A dual pressure control allows the boiler to operate as a high pressure boiler whenever there's licensed people around. And as a low pressure boiler at nights or on weekends. Right? Dual pressure controls are not prohibited, not permitted. This page deals with welded repairs or mechanical repairs to the boiler. Now, all I want you to know is the difference. When I say I did a mechanical repair to a boiler, what I'm telling you is that I replaced a threaded or a flanged connection. All right. I think everybody here realizes that you and I cannot weld on pressure vessels. Does everybody buy into that? It's not a good idea that you and I spark up the torch, all right, and start welding on high pressure boilers, all right? All right. You and I are permitted to attach things to the boiler that are threaded or flanged. All right, does that make sense? All right. So if you can unscrew it, unthread it from the boiler, you and I can replace it. All right. Now, last year they changed the rule that says if you're the engineer in charge and you do a mechanical repair to the boiler, you oversee it. There's a reporting requirement that says you got to tell the Department of Fire Services what exactly it is you did and how you did it. For instance, if you replace the blowdown pipe on the boiler, you can do that, provided you replace it in kind with exactly what was there before. And that comes out of a boiler room in Boston, one of the hospitals. They replaced the blowdown pipe with Schedule 40 piping. It needed Scheduled 80, the heavy duty piping. It came apart. Nobody got hurt, but it kind of freaked everybody out. All right. So they want to know what it is you did. Now, this is kind of overwhelming if you look at it. It says 310 CMRs are the laws in Massachusetts that apply to the environment, environmental protection. All right. But there's only one aspect of boiler operation that really bothers people. And that is what we call visible emissions. All right. All right. Smoke coming off the boiler. All right. In this business, visible emissions is known as opacity. All right. Since most of you today are burning natural gas, it is next to impossible to smoke burning natural gas. In fact, let me take it one step further. If you smoke burning natural gas, you're dangerously close to blowing up. All right. You are so fuel rich. All right. You don't have enough air. All right. You'll get some smoke for a little bit and then you'll blow the whole program up. All right. Opacity is really the only thing they bug us about in this industry. All right. Visible emissions. They don't want any. All right. They're outlawed here in Massachusetts. And speaking of which, they want me to remind you that Massachusetts law far exceeds federal law. All right. So whatever the federal standards are, Massachusetts has taken it a couple of steps further. All right. They're far more stringent. The next couple of pages deal with what's actually an opacity violation. We'll talk about this more when I talk to you about during the combustion section. And just so you know, for every license that you go for, the state has put out a range of examination. And this tells you what a second-class fireman can be asked about on the state exam. This is what I built this course around, all right? There's one of these for every license. First fireman, third engineer, all the way up to first engineer. Everybody kind of gets it, right? All right, so you can look through that at your convenience, all right? Finally, what I'm gonna send you tonight or tomorrow, and I'll always send out a homework assignment on Wednesday's class, and it will be due the following Monday. The homework questions. All the homework questions are the exact questions that appear on the state exam. All right. Every Monday, we'll review these. So by the end of the course, you'll have all the questions they can ask you. Does everybody follow that? All right. In addition, just to show you what a nice guy I am, when people take the state exam, they write back to me and they tell me what are the questions. All right. So I have about 1,000 questions that I'll pass on to you. All right. From the state exam, both written and oral questions. All right. So you should be ready for whatever comes your way. All right. Any questions?
You have the third class engineers questions?
I do. And let's bear with me. Third engineer, I have something even better. Or as I like to say, more better. All right. For third engineer, I have the database of all the questions on the state exam. All right. So if you go through these, all right, these are all the questions that are in the database. All right. Forget how many there are. There's quite a few, 147. Remember, you're only going to get 20. All right. So there's a lot of things to study.
Yeah.
But in addition, I'll also have state exam questions for thirds, the written and the oral. Right here are the third engineer state exam questions. So these are the actual tests that people took, and these are the questions they got asked. All right, so I'll pass all them on to you. So
Right.
by the end of it, you should be ready for whatever comes your way, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
So anyway, tonight, what I'll do is, I don't know if I'll get to it tonight. I'm kind of interested in the outcome of the Celtics game. But by tomorrow, I'll send you the schedule and the homework to your email. All right. And just have the homework done before Monday's class. All right.
Do we have to turn in the homework?
You don't have to turn in the homework. In fact, I'll call on you. All right. But yeah, it's not a requirement that you turn it in. In fact, after class on Monday, I'll send you the right answers to the homework. So you can put that with your answers as part of your study guide. All right. Any other questions?
The photo on the of the inside of the house, where is that yours or?
Yeah.
No, I'm serious because I have a log cabin too. That's what I'm in right now.
I wouldn't call it a log cabin.
Oh, okay. Because that's the same type of roofing ceiling structure I have right now.
Oh,
Looking
okay,
at
yeah,
It looks
yeah.
really-
Depends who you ask. It's more like a craftsman type of house, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I have a log cabin, so.
All right. Now that's kind of rustic, huh?
Yeah, it's nice. I like it.
It's not in Norwood though, is it?
No, I'm in Winchton.
Oh, yeah, you're way out there, huh? You're in the country. That's practically New Hampshire, isn't it?
No, it's just the other end of the state. So I drive 73 miles one way to work.
Oh.
Then I spend 12 hours a day on average there.
Wow.
Then I come back an hour and a half home.
You're dedicated.
Yeah, I'm a stupid idiot, but that's okay.
Hopefully gas stays at $5 a gallon.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I drive a diesel, so it's $5.99 to $6.30 something.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah, I had that Volkswagen Passat diesel for a while. That was great I was getting about 45 miles to the gallon. That was
Exactly, and that's what I pull now.
Yeah.
Why'd you give it up?
Well, they bought it back. They took it away from me because it didn't meet the emissions thing.
I had the modification done. I kept my car.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't do that because I paid 30 for it. And 5 years later, they offered me 26. And I
That's
said,
not bad. That's not bad.
I said, I'm going to take the money. I
Because I
ended
got
up,
to tell you now, you can't find those cars. People don't sell them.
right,
They're,
right.
you know, the fuel mileage you're getting, like you said, 45. And was that an automatic or standard?
Automatic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had to stand it, and you know, I'm pulling great mileage with it, but you can't find those cars. End of story. Nobody gives them up.
Right. No, I believe that. I believe it. And yeah, I should have been a little suspicious on how easy it was to sell it back to them, you know. But they wanted it off, you know, they wanted it off the books, whatever they were looking to do. So they gave me a fair price.
So what did you buy?
I bought a Mustang 5.0. That gets about 18 miles to the gallon. Right? Yeah.
I would have used that as a down payment on one of the new vets. Just saying. the
There you
engine.
go. Yeah, there you go. All right, that's it. Any questions for me before I let you go?
No.
So like I said, tomorrow sometime you'll get the schedule and the homework assignment, and that'll be it till I see you next Monday.
Sounds good.
All right. Good night.
Have a good one, brothers.
All right. Go Celtics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.